Welcome to Viva La Vulva, the podcast that explores and teaches about the goodness of the vulva. Here is your host, Dr. Kara Quant, an internal medicine doctor and advocate for female sexual health.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Viva La Vulva, the podcast where I talk about all things related to female sexual health. I'm your host, Dr. Kara Quant. Today, I'm bringing on one of our juiciest episodes. And trust me, it sparked a lot of conversation amongst my friends when it first dropped. We're talking about non-monogamy, opening your relationship, monogamish. Well, call what you want, but we're talking about what happens when one relationship style doesn't fit all. My guest is a brilliant Dr. Joli Hamilton, relationship coach, research psychologist, and someone who has studied the beautiful, complicated, sometimes messy world of open relationship from all the angles. We get into what it actually means to open a relationship, what the research says, and most importantly, how to do it without blowing everything up. So whether you're curious, currently navigating an open relationship, or just want to understand what all the buzz is about, pull up a seat. This one is for you. Let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome to the Viva La Vulva podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kara Quant, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today on this special episode. But today I am joined by Dr. Joli Hamilton, who is a relationship coach for couples who color outside the lines. She is a research psychologist, a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, an ASEC certified sex educator. She also is a co-host of the Project Relationship podcast with her anchor partner, Ken. Joli's been featured in the New York Times, Vogue, NPR, and The Atlantic. She spent the past 2 decades studying and reimagining what love can be if we open our imaginations to possibilities. Joli helps people create non-monogamous relationships that are custom built for their authentic selves. No more shrinking, pretending, or hiding required. Thank you, Joli, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kara. It's really, I love to talk about this stuff. So thank you.
Yes. Let's just dive in. I wanted to do an episode an episode about relationships, about discussing jealousy in a relationship, especially a committed relationship like marriage. And, for the listeners out there, if you're not in a committed relationship, if you're just, dating around, I still feel like it's important information that we are going to discuss today. So I am ready to dive into it if you are.
I love it. Jealousy is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Let's just start there. Like what is jealousy? Why do you feel like people express jealousy, have jealousy? Yeah.
Well, let's start with, what is jealousy? Because we use the term, casually, right? We'll say like, oh, I'm jealous. And we use it to cover a whole range of things. Like people will say jealous when they really mean envious. People will say jelly when they mean like, oh, I kind of admire that about you, right? So let's just break it down for a second and say jealousy is the fear, the threat response we have when we experience a potential threat, either a real one or imagined one to a valued relationship. So you can spot jealousy when there's a triangle. There's me, there's my beloved, and then there's my perceived interrupter. Again, they don't actually have to be doing anything for me to perceive them as a potential interruption. But that triangle helps us sort jealousy out from envy, because envy is about wanting to be what someone else is or have what they have. And those are just two different things going on. And you can be jealous and envious at the same time. And the reason this matters is we would deal with them in different ways, right? Jealousy is about my relationship, about seeking reassurance and clarity of agreements and wanting to turn to my partner and make sure I understand what's going on. And envy can be motivating. It can be like, oh, I want that promotion. So I see my friend having that promotion and I want it. So now I work differently. I do different things. I go back to school. Or it can be about wanting what they have. Like, oh, I really like how their partner treats them. Oh, what would I have to do in my life? Right. So envy is different. But if you're envious of the perceived interrupter, well, then you can be envious and jealous at the same time. You can be like, they're hotter than me, they're younger than me, or I think they're just better in some way than me. And so I might be envious of them and at the same time fearful that they're going to somehow interfere with my relationship. And at heart, jealousy is just a natural reaction. It's designed to keep us connected to people we really value. So there's nothing wrong with feeling the jealousy, but it often feels wrong when we feel it. Most people are like, ick, push it away. I don't want it. But it's there for a reason. It was there right from the time we were little babies, and we needed to be connected to our primary caregivers for survival, right? Like we literally need that. And then jealousy kind of just goes underground. We're toddlers and siblings show up, or preschool kids show up in our play groups, and we're supposed to share stuff. And so we're told not to be jealous, and nobody really talks about it much. I've done thousands of conversations about jealousy. Nobody has ever said, my parents really just they taught me how to deal with jealousy well. They really sat me down and then walked me through it over and over again. And I do think that the next generation is going to do a much better job with it. But
yeah,
jealousy is just a normal emotion that we feel when we feel that threat to a valued relationship. So, and if you don't experience jealousy, well, first, you're not dead yet. So remember, it might come and bite you later. and your partner might. Right. So just because you aren't doesn't mean your partner won't. So getting really fluent and understanding what jealousy is can be a huge relationship win for everybody and for your friendships too, because jealousy can show up in all kinds of relationships where we care deeply about someone.
Yeah. Now, do you think it is we feel ashamed about it, about having the feeling of jealousy, and that's the reason why we don't talk about it?
I've studied jealousy in both monogamous and non-monogamous relationships. And the biggest differentiator between those groups of people, when I collected the data, and this was qualitative data, so I was like deep conversations with people about it. The biggest difference was that monogamous folks often talked about feeling shame just for having the jealousy come up if they felt like it wasn't justified. On the other hand, if they felt the jealousy was justified, in other words, they could see some interrupter, they could see like, whoa, my partner is doing something wrong, and their jealousy felt justified, then they didn't feel shame. So really, we got to get into the nuances of it and tease it apart. But yes, jealousy can be thought of as an emotion that comes with a bunch of other emotions riding along with it, often fear, anger, sadness, grief, and shame. And that may also have to do with, how was jealousy talked about? How was it talked about in your childhood? How was it talked about if you were raised in a church? How was it talked about at school? And this one is my favorite. How was it talked about when you were a young teenager amongst your friend group? Was it something that was like righteous and like people would build up big stories about it? Or was it actually something like, ew, that's gross, you're so insecure? And right, like however that formed, that's going to make the story you tell yourself about jealousy. And we got to deal with that in order to really get into managing our jealousy and any shame that comes up more proactively so that it doesn't just run us over like a speeding train.
Yeah. And I mean, you said you talk about jealousy a lot, but getting to the, opening a marriage or opening a relationship to other people and other factors, I feel like that's really when jealousy can rear its ugly head, or just its head, maybe not ugly head.
Right.
And you're like, wait, where did this come from?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so non-monogamy, when people are opening up, right, they're changing their relationship structure, they're inviting the concept of jealousy in through the door. However, it is also a very normalized conversation. So my non-monogamous participants often are like, we talk about jealousy because we're expecting it. So they talk about it. They talk about what to do when it shows up. They talk about it in their communities. They talk about it with their therapists. It's very normal. Whereas the monogamous participants often felt blindsided when jealousy showed up and didn't know what to do with it, or whether it was justified or whether it was okay and why it was showing up. And also didn't even necessarily know what to do because often they felt some shame. Like, does this mean my relationship isn't strong or whatever? And so what I find is monogamy offers this promise, right? It writes a check it can't cash. There's this idea that it will protect you from jealousy, but it just doesn't. The research just does not back that up. Non-monogamy also makes a promise that you'll have to deal with jealousy, And plenty of non-monogamous people are like, I mean, yeah, but no more than any other feeling, because we're all different. Some of us are going to feel jealousy big, and some of us are going to feel it big and angry or big and sad, and it's going to be overwhelming. And some of us are going to be like, in fact, my anchor partner, he rarely feels any sort of activated jealousy. He feels it in this sort of gentle, like the tide coming in, like, oh, there's some jealousy. And I date actively. I'm non-monogamous. So like he has plenty of opportunity to feel that. And yeah, so whatever range of jealousy you feel, it's not just about your relationship structure. It's also about how you happen to be wired and the stories you tell yourself about jealousy. Those will all impact what sense you make out of it, what meaning you make out of it, and then how you experience it.
Yeah. Well, moving to a question about opening up a relationship, becoming from monogamous to a non-monogamous marriage or relationship. How, in your advice, you open up, what are the steps of opening up a marriage successfully?
Yeah,
a relationship.
It's funny. I was asked this question by a room full of university students last night. And I think the interesting part about that question is really that there is no one way to do it, but there are some very bad ways to do it. There are some ways that do not go ideally. So I like to start off by just first saying, I don't recommend that people wait a long time, like having ideas build up in their head, not really sharing them with their partner, just sort of fantasizing about it quietly until they basically fall in love with or fall in complete lust with some specific person out in the world. And then they're like, hey, I really want to open up our relationship because I want to date this person. Like you just set yourself up for quite a lot of pain and probably to experience that person you've got your eyes on as being sort of targeted jealously, like, right. Like they're going to look like the interrupter, even if they might not even know anything about it. They might not even know what's happening. So that's my first caveat, is to not wait and just assume that you need to wait until you know who you want to act with for that to be the right time. If I had my druthers and I were just sitting with people and saying, okay, you are in a relationship now, my words of advice would be play with the conversations around opening as a normal part of being monogamous too. Like just normalize it, make it a normal thing. Like, what do you think about open relationships? How is that landing for you? I do it with people all the time, monogamous clients they're like, yep, we're committed to monogamy. I still ask them at least in a yearly check-in to be like, how is this landing for you? Like, is this coming up in your imagination? Is this coming up as an idea? Because the longer that just sort of sits in the background, the bigger the fear gets about bringing it to our partners. And then we may turn it into this fantasy that isn't even a real thing we want to act on, but it becomes so fantastic that we almost can't stop ourselves. And all of that is way messier than it needs to be. My very favorite first step too is to just imagine it. Like if you currently are in a relationship, try sharing fantasies. Try sharing fantasies with your partner. Maybe start with people you don't actually know in real life or total fantasy figures. Talk about that. See if that brings up jealousy. See how that lands for each of you, like process it afterwards, and then move to maybe like fantasizing about somebody you see at a bar or out at a restaurant. Just like play with that and see, how does it land? Is this bringing up big stuff, or is it actually really juicy and sexy? It's not all about sex, but playing with that in the fantasy realm gives you a chance to sort of acclimate to like, oh, what does this bring up for me? And that is a huge win. Whether you open or not, that's a huge win, because now you have new conversations you can have with your partner.
Yeah. So what if you are a partner who has been fantasizing about it for a while, about opening it up, or just fantasizing about another person, and maybe you have brought it up in the past and it has been shut down, or it has been like, no, I don't want to do that. No, that sounds like a horrible idea. Like, from the other partner. What can someone do in that situation?
Yeah. So I think, I am a big fan of consciously creating the relationship situations that we want. And that includes remembering that We live in a time and a place where we get to leave each other. We get to be divorced. We get to be separated. We get to break up. And I mention that because sometimes people imagine that because we have this monogamy as default imagination, we're like, well, if I have to break anything in order to be non-monogamous, then I just shouldn't do it and it's bad. But people break up for a lot of reasons. Now, I'm not saying you should break up because you're fantasizing about being open. That's silly. I don't break up with people for any particular reason, right? I break up as part of a whole, like a whole idea about how is this relationship? How does it suit my needs and wants and desires?
Yeah.
But if you have been fantasizing for a long time and you've been shut down before, one of my questions would be, how did you talk about it? Like, did you talk about it in a way that really let your partner acclimate to the idea? Did it start helping them get educated about what the possibilities are? Because there's not just one thing. You know, some people have really narrow versions of non-monogamy. I actually call them creative monogamy because most of their life is really monogamous, but they maybe go to play parties or go to clubs or maybe participate in a little old-fashioned swinging, right? Like something along those lines. But then the rest of their life is like really monogamous looking. And, you know, on the other hand, like I'm married, I have 7 kids and I date all the time, right? Like that. And that's normal. And I have other partners and that's normal in my life. And so if those are the ends of a spectrum, think of how many options there are in there. So usually what happens if people have been shut down, it's because their partner rushed to imagine a scenario they could not tolerate.
Yeah.
That might not even have been what was wanted. So I think of this as an opportunity to increase our intimacy. Like if your partner brings this to you, can you meet their request with tell me what that means? What does it mean for you? Like what does not, why am I not enough? Like I know your imagination's going to want to go there. Why am I not enough? But what I would ask is, tell me what exploring non-monogamy would mean for you. Like how do you imagine it might look? What would you like to get out of that? And what role do you see me playing in that? You know, how would you like it to go? I host a monthly salon for people who are questioning exactly this. Like, what do we do? And I even have a recorded conversation that I'm like, play this for your partner so they understand. They understand that this does not mean I'm done unless we are polyamorous now. Because that is just too extreme. That's an extreme. And when we're transitioning relationship styles, extremism, not helpful for anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like it's not that it's the way you bring it up. And that maybe the partner that is opposed to it, it's not like a maybe forever no. Maybe it's like like let's see how it goes, or like having the conversation and communicating about what it looks like to that other person that does want it.
Right. And like think about this. I've had people come in and in fact somebody was in my office just a couple months ago and they're having the conversation. We're on Zoom, right? And they're having the conversation because he really wanted to be cool with the opening up, but he was brought this conversation. And I was like sensing that he kind of wanted to be cool with it, but he was really resistant, really, really resistant. And she was like, this is just what I want. And we got about 40 minutes into the conversation before she happened to stand up to get a glass of water. And I noticed that she was pregnant, quite pregnant. And I was like, oh, you all didn't bring one of the pieces into the room. I had not asked. My bad. I did not ask at the beginning of the conversation. And when we started talking about that, he's like, this is just not the moment. I'm just like, we're adjusting. There'll be a new baby. We already have a kid. There's just a lot on our plate already. I'm into the idea in general, but I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Okay. Totally different conversation. What we did was press pause on that. We scheduled sessions to like learn about the principles of that kind of relationship. And then they decided to get on what I think of as like a long nurture cycle. Like, let's talk about this and plan for it and learn the skills of it for like a year or two. And then we'll take action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a completely different conversation that he was totally like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And also making no promises for like, yes, I'm absolutely in and I'm in for everything. Just because I said I'm in for one thing means I'm in for everything. Because that's not a consensual relationship.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah. And so the next question I have is about, are there happy, open marriages out there? And I know that you are open and honest about your relationship of non-monogamy.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really sweet question because, you know, we get the sensational versions, right? Like that's what we see. When we see open relationships, we either get the actual sensational version, like it's in the tabloids, bad, you know, stuff happening in people's relationships, or if it's happening in our real life, you know, we see when people's marriages explode, or we see like the big stories, because regular old polyamorous people don't really look like anything. They don't look like anything. I mean, if you saw me on a random Saturday, you would see me with one of my partners out for coffee. I might have just dropped my kids off at the movies, and they might be heading over to visit me at my house, and my husband might be leaving or staying home, and I'm going to bring somebody home, and none of that is going to be visible, right? Like none of it. It's because it's just going to look like people doing people stuff. So the answer is absolutely there are, and I happen to know dozens of them, but a lot of them also don't feel totally safe to be out because this is still not acceptable everywhere. And that is unfortunate. We know the data is showing us that people are being discriminated against. People are feeling like they are ostracized. There are studies showing that we are not able to provide the same amount of mental health support as we might want to because we assume monogamy. And so we're not bringing questions about non-monogamy and jealousy into the room. So there are lots of reasons why the happy people are just like, yeah, we're just going to do our thing and nobody will really know. But they're out there, I promise. And they're so sweet. And some of them just have these like luscious love stories that I would like to turn into a book or a real TV series about non-monogamy instead of all the nonsense that we get.
Yeah. And, you know, coming from the doctor, you know, in the hospital perspective, I ask people all the time. I mean, one of my questions, especially when it comes to STDs which is a big conversation. It's, you know, do you have sex with men, women, or both? And, you know, like, do you use condoms all the time? Sometimes never. But there are, you know, a couple people, I feel like not everyone is honest. I feel like, you know, me asking the question of, do you have sex with both, you know, two different, sexes, you know, do you do that? Can open someone up to be like, oh, you know what, actually I do. And some people have said that they do, but I feel like it's still rare and, you know, it's few between. So, but I do ask the question, and there are some people who are open and honest and they're like, yes, I have sex with both, you know, two people. I am, you know, fluid bonded. And so there's a lot of, there are people that are out there, and coming from, you know, my perspective, I feel like, it would be nice for people to continue being open and honest about that.
Right.
Question.
It lets us provide better care. It just does. Yeah. And that's it's a great question to just destigmatize it. Like, you don't have to ask people what your relationship structure is or even how you identify. Like, I know plenty of men who have sex with men who don't identify as gay or even as bi. Like, they have not assumed that identity. That's just not them, but they're like, yes, but I do have sex with men. Maybe it's infrequent or maybe it's only in certain circumstances, but they do. And so asking the non-stigmatizing question of like, just tell me who your sexual partners, you know, are, and letting that be that creates that courageous space for people to get the opportunity to be who they are. And also it just lets like humans do human things, like just like be who they actually are, because we know that non-monogamy is incredibly normal in like the history of humanity. Very normal. In the history of mammals, very normal. So, you know, from that perspective, it's just just treat it. Yeah. Just one of the range of possibilities.
Yes. And I was, you know, in doing research about non-monogamy, and I've even heard this in the animal kingdom, there's few animals that are completely monogamous. I mean, most are
like 11. Yeah. It's literally like 11 species. It's so low. And even the ones that we have a lot of, like, we have like an anthropomorphized view, like penguins. We're like, oh, penguins with the little penguin pairs and the daddies with the eggs on the feet. But they do that one season at a time. The next season, they're paired with a different partner. So like we forget that we put human ideas onto other species rather than saying like, what is actually this thing called normal? And that said, if monogamy works for you and it's what you want, awesome, do it. Like all the guidelines and all the ways that I work with non-monogamy, they all apply to monogamy. Every single one of them, have clear agreements, talk about jealousy as a healthy and normal emotion that needs to be dealt with well. Do things like nurture compersion, the opposite feeling of jealousy. Like these are all things that we can do in monogamy too. So it's not an either or. Again, it's really just about let's do relationships well. Let's just do that.
Yeah. Getting to jealousy again. How can jealousy actually be leveraged for a deeper connection with your partner or partners?
So jealousy is one of those emotions that tends to, it provokes big reactions in a lot of people. And sometimes those big reactions, we think about like the big explosive ones, but also big reactions that cause withdrawal, right? Like the ones that make us go inside. But if we're able to expose our experience of jealousy to our partners, then we have the opportunity to help them understand us better. Like that is basically, if you think through the trajectory I laid out for jealousy at the beginning, it is a view, it's a window back into your pre-verbal experience of being a person, right? It's a window into your attachment wounds and your softness and your vulnerability and your fears and your hopes. That's an amazing gift. Now, it doesn't feel like a gift if it's coming in the form of accusations or if it's coming in the form of like threats or demands for behavior to be changed. For instance, I'll frequently see people who voice their jealousy by saying, my partner's not allowed to spend any time alone with people of another gender, or my partner's not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And they just state it categorically. Like they just say it. There's no discussion. There's no negotiation about this is normal. And that's the way we typically share about jealousy. And I would say, if you want jealousy to be about deepening your intimacy, then what you want to do is be vulnerable and say, when you are with people of a gender that I know you're attracted to, I get scared. And here's how this scared feels for me. Here's how it looks. And then together you can work on, well, what might help that scared feeling? Because oftentimes it's not actually about controlling who your partners are with, because that control then feels like gripping, right? It's like we're trying to hold so tight to feel safe, when often the best answer is to instead ask for reassurance, make really clear relationship agreements about, hey, if you do have feelings for someone, I want to know about it right away so that we can get to counseling, so that we can like deal with this, because people have feelings, people get lusty, like stuff happens. Let's make that normal. And so those conversations, if we normalize the conversations, it just changes the way we can be vulnerable to our partners about this emotion that has so much wisdom for us, but most of us try to hide or ignore or kill. And it's not going anywhere. It's an archetypal emotion. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And I have heard that in many situations and relationships and other, friends of mine, relationships of like, it's a statement. It's like, you're not going to hang out with opposite sex, or you're not going to hang out with this particular person, or you're not going to talk on the phone with this person. Like, it's a statement. And I like that you're saying that, it's to rephrase it in a different way, to bring I statements into the communication, rather than like, this is a statement and that's the way it's going to be.
Right. And a lot of times this is where we can get into that pernicious boundaries conversation that is just everywhere right now, thanks to Jonah Hill, about like, people will say, I'm setting a boundary for you. Like, that's not actually how boundaries work. You may say, hey, if my partner consistently doesn't show up and is late for all of our dinners, and then, is texting on those dinners, and I find out that like they're texting with people that they are attracted to, like, yeah, you absolutely should set a boundary around being treated that way. But just stating how your partner should behave so that you don't ever bump up against feelings of discomfort, it doesn't actually lead down the path of deeper intimacy.
Yeah.
And discomfort isn't actually the enemy here either. Like, we can be uncomfortable and then our partner can help us find our center again. And that's luscious.
Yeah, but I feel like, I mean, even for myself, sometimes the discomfort is so discomforting that it's like I don't even want to address it because
Right.
is there another side? Is it just I'm going to stay in the discomfort?
Right.
But it sounds like there is another side to it. There is like moving through the
Right.
emotion.
Exactly. It's so every emotion is just like childbirth. And if you've given birth, then like there is nothing to do but give birth. There is no option to not, right? Like once you are pregnant with the emotion, right? Like you're going to have to just feel it and let it pass through. And so you can put that off. You can keep packing it away, but we know that does not work out. Like we have collected the data. We know that not feeling our feelings does not actually work. So you could avoid it, or you could freak out and you could just keep freaking out about it. But in truth, just being able to sit and feel our feelings is a huge win. And yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but how long? I've given birth several times, and how long did I want to be in an uncomfortable position? You know what? Not less time than I was. I'm feeling an emotion though. Both of my easiest births came because I gave up and I was like, I'm just going to have to feel this and push this baby through. I'm just going to have to feel it. I feel the same way about feelings and emotions that I don't want to with my partners. Like, yeah, I'm just going to have to do it. Got to go through. Yeah. There is no around.
Yeah. There's no around. Yeah. And if there isn't around, or there's not an around, but if you do the around, then it's just going to lead to building on emotions that are not being released.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you're going to start making stories about those too. Like we start building the narrative of our experience. Yeah. And as we build that narrative, we have bigger problems because now we're making what our partner's doing into a bigger story, and they might not even know it. They may not even know. Like they might be doing something that is provoking jealousy for you. But if they don't know it, then what are we actually going to do? We're just going to wait. And this is where we can ask ourselves, am I expecting my partner to read my mind? If I am, well, I hold all the cards right now. If I'm expecting my partner to read my mind, all I have to do is stop that. I can literally just say, I'm going to tell them. And you might want a third party help. That might be a good time to see a counselor. Be like, yeah, I need help because I'm not actually stating my needs and my boundaries, my wants. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what good therapy's for.
Yeah. So in your research, is there anything that you found that has gotten people to get through jealousy a little bit easier?
Yeah. The thing that was most unexpected for me in my research was I thought I was just going to be describing jealousy. I set out just to add to the descriptions of jealousy. And then what happened was actually some people managed it really well. And the people who managed it well were doing the same set of things over and over and over again. So I call that the jealousy roadmap because these people were facing jealousy. They weren't not having it. They were experiencing jealousy and managing it well. And they were doing the same 4 things and then one bonus thing. So they were noticing their jealousy really early. They were noticing it like as body clues, like they were getting deep wisdom from their body. Like, oh, they noticed prickles on their skin, or they'd notice that they felt, a stomach ache when a certain person was around. They'd notice it really early. And then they take step 2. They'd just name it. They would just own it. Like, yep, I'm feeling some jealousy. That doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't make my relationship bad. It doesn't make my partner bad. I'm feeling this jealousy. And now I'm going to unpack it and see, is my jealousy like anger flavored or sadness flavored? They just got a little more intimate with the jealousy itself without judging it and without trying to fix it too fast. And from there, we shifted into exactly the steps we've been talking about already. They made more sense out of their jealousy story. What do I think this jealousy means? So they would narrate it. Like, does jealousy mean that my relationship is on the rocks? Does jealousy mean I'm a bad person? Does jealousy mean my partner is cheating on me? What does this jealousy mean? Like, what is my idea? If they get clear on the narrative about jealousy, then now they have next steps, like right away. And some of that is just all my side of the street stuff. I don't even have to wait for my partner to do anything, which is awesome. So those first 3 steps are really all you. You notice it, you name it, you figure out the narrative of your jealousy. And then the 4th step is the one that you might want a counselor around for. It's navigating your needs, figuring out, do I actually have explicit agreements? Have I told my partner how I expect to be treated? Have I worked with them to create an environment where we can talk about these uncomfortable things? That's not easy for everybody. So get the help that you need to. And then the fifth step is, it only showed up in my non-monogamous participants, and it's what my TED Talk is all about. It's about compersion, nurturing compersion, the feeling of joy for my partner's joy, even when it has nothing to do with me. You don't have to. You don't have to feel compersion. It's not required. It's not better than. It's not morally better, but it is comfier and it's more yummy, right? So people who understood that they could be jealous and also be happy for their partner getting what they wanted and having attention, they just had a wider range of emotions to feel during those uncomfortable moments of jealousy. So that's the roadmap. That's how people made it go easier. And I'm really grateful that they shared their stories and that roadmap appeared in front of me.
Yeah. And I was going to ask about, and I feel like you've kind of answered it, but I was going to ask about, how to maintain a sense of self, just self in an open, non-monogamous relationship. And it kind of sounds like compersion and navigating the feelings of jealousy is kind of a way to have a sense of self in a relationship like that.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say it that way. My podcast, which used to be called Project Relationship, it's now called Playing with Fire. It's about individuation and non-monogamy. And the reason it is about individuation is I'm a Jungian psychologist. So I studied the work of Carl Jung and the concept of individuation, like being the most you version of you possible, continually moving toward your capital S self. And that I find that people in non-monogamous relationships often need to know that this is part of their individuation journey, like part of I'm going to maintain and actually nurture and build a separate sense of self. I am going to focus on that. But the thing is, absolutely true for people in monogamous relationships too. We can both be deeply connected. I am highly entwined with my anchor partner. I'm married, we co-parent, we own property together, highly entwined. And we work on maintaining our sense of individual selfhood, differentiation, and supporting each other, continually becoming more ourselves, which means sometimes we do feel sort of like we're growing apart. And then we have to figure out what that looks like. What does that mean, right? It's the experience of what happens when we feel like we're growing apart and we acknowledge that that's just because we're both growing. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing anything wrong. And what practices can we do to make sure that we also still practice our intimacy, practice knowing each other together, practice building the life we want together. To me, that's the whole thing. All of my work, even though from the outside it looks like it's mostly about non-monogamy, it's really all about individuation.
Okay. And so how do you maintain individuation in a relationship?
I mean, there are a few things that I like people to focus on. One is having an ability to have and want different wants and needs. Really, and this sounds really, really simple, but the number of people who come into my work, and usually in about somewhere around week 3 or 4, I have them do an exercise about identifying their needs, wants, and desires. The number of people who get stuck on that exercise and just they cannot name their needs. And one of the things that gets said frequently and often by women who were trained to be people pleasers, is I don't really believe I get to have needs. I don't think I do. My needs should always take my partner into account. Always. Yeah. I don't care what kind of relationship structure you want. That is problematic because that is absolutely going to lead you down a path of not knowing whether you are doing things because you genuinely want them or because you are just fawning and leaning all the way over into this deeply codependent state. And I know I was raised by codependent parents who were proud of their codependence. So they called it out. I knew that word by the time I was 8 years old. They loved it. And if you choose that route, you get to, but it will be really, really easy to lose your sense of self. And the way out is to start regularly identifying your needs, your wants, your desires, and then sharing them with your partner in a way that isn't about your partner meeting those needs necessarily, just saying like, this is what I need in my life. This is how I want my life to go. And then you can collaboratively work on like, oh, how can we support each other in having our needs met? And this could be about like supporting each other to have enough time, access to time, resources, energy to do the things and have the things we want. But it can also be about showing up for each other, right? I can have a need that I need you to show up for, and also not be willing to own that need because I'm not willing to ask you to show up for me. Really, really complicated for your partner then to help you be more yourself if you're not willing to ask anything of them. So again, it's not really about relationship structure. It's about healthy relating. End of story. No matter which kind of relationship you want to have.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. And how is creative monogamy different from just being married the typical way?
Yeah. So creative monogamy is a term I use to help people make themselves understood. Right. So a lot of people struggle because they're like, we know we want something that's like a little different. We know that we don't quite fit in the monogamous box anymore. But we're not really comfortable just saying like, oh, I'm wide open. I can do whatever. Right. And so for some people, the concept of open relationship just works. They're like, yep, that fits. That's a good enough label. But for other people, I find that they really do have an attachment to the concept of and the practice of monogamy. And I'm for you creating the relationship that you actually want. So if you're going to practice monogamy or maybe monogamy plus, right? Like a little bit more than that. Okay, let's get really clear so that you can show up to any relationship that you're going to have, whether that's like an intimate friendship or whether that's a play partner, and be able to tell them, yes, I am available for intimacy, but here's the boundary. Here's the limit of that. So how I make that really easy for people is I ask them to get clear. Where do you want to be exclusive? What are the domains in your life that you want to be exclusive? Are you going to parent exclusively with one person? Are you going to have home ownership exclusively with one person? Are you going to have businesses with one other person? Are you going to be sexually exclusive with one other person? Whatever it is. And I have a whole list. There's tons of domains of your relating. And where are you going to be expansive? Where do you want to really allow for each other to be fully present to whatever evolves? And this is where people often get caught up in the idea that it's always about sex, but it's not. Because it might be sex where you want to be expansive, but what about really deep friendship? Like, I'm bisexual and some of my most profound relationships are platonic from like an outsider's perspective, but we're deeply in love with each other. We're profoundly connected to each other. And I don't like to cheapen that with some idea that it is less important than my supposed like committed relationships where the only difference is that I have sex with those people. And we might not even actually be that intimate in some other ways. So this is about getting clear. If I'm going to be expansive, what does that mean? And a lot of people already have experience with this because they practice having friendships. If you practice having solid friendships separate from your partnership, you're already practicing a version of this. And could just be about building on that in a way that suits you. And again, that can also be for a phase. It might not be a permanent change. For some people, this is about an exploration. And some people walk all the way through. I take people through a whole year of work. And we learn, like, how do you do this well? What are the tools you need, the skills you need to do this well? And some people walk all the way through that and they come back and they're like, oh, you know what? We really like monogamy. That's actually the right choice. Great. Now they have conscious, really well thought out, well skilled monogamy. And they've also gone on this adventure together. And other people are like, oh, actually, I have a couple I'm working with right now who, they're living apart together. They're absolutely together. They're married. They're planning their children together, but they got separate apartments because they found out they don't like living together. Yep. The options become endless when you bust open the assumptions.
Yeah. And the societal norm. So
exactly.
We have to do it this way. We have to, marriage has to look like this. So I really like that.
Yeah.
And I just going on the comment of, the friendships and already doing that. I do know people who tend to cut off their friendships during their relationships, even if it's just, for a couple months or a couple month relationship or even longer years, where people just don't want to have that relation or just notice that their relationships change with their friends.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's a question for each of us to grapple with as individuals, wherever you are and you're relating right now. Like, are you available for friendship? For a friendship where you show up for the person, where you really, not just, hey, we chat when we're on the soccer sidelines, not just, hey, we talk at work, but like where we really show up. And if you aren't, okay, that's fine. But just know that like that is another form of relationship available to you. And a lot of us just get out of practice when we get into our romantic, sexual relating years, and we just stop actually investing our time and energy in our friendships. But for many people I work with, that's actually the key. That's what they really want. They want deep friendships again. And they kind of have to bust some stuff open to make space for it, because they've been practicing this default monogamy that encouraged them, without anybody ever saying anything, without their partner saying a word sometimes, encouraged them to not have deep friendships just because you do all your things with one person, all of them, everything, all the time. And you get to, if you like that, you get to, but it's also just one option amongst many.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless, it sounds like.
They really are.
Yes, I like that. And to kind of close it out, and I love this next question, but what is the one single conversation to reignite your sex life?
I love this question. I love this question so much. So I love it so much that I made a PDF so people can grab this at Listen to Joli. It's a guided conversation because it's really simple. It's one question, but it will turn into a conversation if you do it well. And the question is, what is sex? What is it really? If you want to have better sex, you need to be able to talk about it with the people you're having sex with. But I teach sex therapists, sex counselors, sex educators. We get together in these big rooms. And if you have 1,000 of us together in a room and you ask us to define sex, what is sex? You will get 1,000 answers turned back in. And I know this because I've collected the little pieces of paper and I'm like, wow, look at all these different definitions. Great. That's a good thing. There may be commonalities, but what happens if I have this conversation with my partner, all of a sudden I find out what they think sex is, which makes it much easier to re-steer the ship, right? Like if the ship is not heading in a direction we like, if the sex isn't yummy anymore, or if we're just bored, we can redirect. And the sub questions to that are things like, when does sex start? Like what acts have to be included for it to count as sex? How do I know when I'm done? Is there a goal of sex, or can it be process-oriented sex? And you get into this conversation. I encourage this to be like a date conversation. Like, let all answers be good answers, because you can also have very different ideas of what sex is. You could have like 3 or 4 brands of sex that you want to have in your relationship or in your marriage. Great. Awesome. That's just going to give you more options and make it easier for you to actually navigate getting the kind of sex you want. Because we know for certain, and sex therapists have been telling us this for years, it's usually not about whether we want sex or we don't. Usually if there's desire discrepancy, it's about not wanting the kind of sex we think we have access to. So you want to change that. This question, what is sex? What is sex for you?
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Joli, for being on the podcast today. And I want you to let the listeners know how people can stay in touch with you. You are a relationship coach, so how they can get on your panel of clients. How can we stay in touch and in contact?
Yeah. So if you are listening to this and you're like, okay, this non-monogamy thing sounds a little sketch, but I'm kind of intrigued as well. Or if you're one of those people that's been listening for a long time to ideas like this and you just don't know what to do, I want you to go to joliquiz.com, JOLIQUIZ.com. It's a 10 question quiz that comes right out of my research that was just designed to help people figure out where they are right now from Oh, hell no. We are not prepared to, yes, absolutely. We are so ready. Let's take this on as an adventure. From there, you'll be invited into my space to participate in, I have free monthly salons where I talk about the 5 pillars of successful non-relating. You can also join me at any one of those anytime you want by going to openeasier.com. And if you're looking for more information about that jealousy roadmap, there's one more thing you should definitely do, which is go to listentojoli.com and get the jealousy roadmap. I laid it out for you so you don't have to go back and try to take copious notes. 20-page booklet just lays out. If you're struggling with jealousy, please don't struggle alone. You don't need to struggle alone, and it can be a really lonely feeling. And I'm also kicking around all the socials at Dr. Joli_Hamilton.
Yes. Okay. Well, I will have that those links in the description of the podcast today. So if you didn't get it, you can see it in the description. And again, thank you, Dr. Joli Hamilton, for being on this podcast. This was such a juicy conversation, and I feel like overall it shows me as well as others that there are numerous endless possibilities within a relationship. It doesn't have to be the traditional societal norms that we grew up thinking about and seeing from parents and so forth. So I thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you out there for listening to the Viva La Vulva podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, let other friends and family know about it. And that is it for today. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining me today on the Viva La Vulva podcast. I am your host and internal medicine physician, Dr. Kara Quant. If you like this podcast, please let others know and subscribe. Also, if you want to hear more information about what's happening with Viva La Vulva, hop over to our website at vivalavulvala.org and sign up for our newsletter.